Okay, so today I'm talking about why the best M4 Mac for video editors on a budget is the M4 Mac Mini base model. First up, let's talk about storage. So I know the base model Mac Mini only comes with 256 gigabytes of SSD storage, and that may sound like a bit limiting for video editors, but here's the thing. If you're strategic about this, it doesn't really have to hold you back at all, okay? So you can easily add external storage. For example, so I use a Synology NAS, I put all my photos on it, I put all my videos on it, and that's pretty much the bulk of all my storage. It's super convenient, it frees up space on my Mac, and that way I just kind of keep my desktop and download folders clean for the most part, and then when I need any extra space, I just connect an external hard drive. Now for me, everything else is on my downloads folder or my desktop folder, and that may be different for you, but what I can do is I can just designate a hard drive for my downloads folder or my desktop space, and I don't have to worry about maxing out that 256 gigabyte SSD. So for the most part, I would say don't worry about that number of 256 gigabytes. If you're strategic, you can pull it off. Next, let's talk about RAM. So the base model comes with 16 gigabytes, and for most video editing tasks, that's perfectly fine. And I know you might hear people say, well, wouldn't 32 gigabytes be better? But in my experience, unless you're doing some really heavy editing or really big projects, you're not gonna feel a difference with 32 gigabytes. I've done video editing with 16 gigabytes for the last 4 years with my MacBook Air, and it's been holding up just fine. So I would say if you can, just save your money here. 16 gigabytes is going to take you a long way, especially if you're just doing normal editing work. Okay, so let's get into speed and performance. So this is where things kind of get interesting. Editing video on an M4 Mac Mini base model is going to be really fast thanks to the media engines it comes with. And this kind of goes along with any Mac. When it comes to video editing, the media engines are doing most of the heavy lifting, and you don't need tons of CPU cores or crazy GPU power. What matters is how efficiently it handles rendering. Most people are looking at what's gonna render the quickest. You are gonna notice a difference with just placing timelines together and stacking timelines. For the most part, it comes down to the media engine. But if you are looking for something even faster for like bulk exporting or super high res files that you have to export, that's when it comes down to the M1 or M2 Max Studios, because they have two media engines. You could also lay down a ton of money on the M4 Pro Max, which is $3,000. And if you're gonna be doing some Hollywood level work, I mean, I would say definitely go for it. It's gonna give you tons of power. But when it comes to performance for most people's needs, you're gonna be just fine with the Mac Mini. If you think about it, the M4 Max, you could probably buy about 6 Mac Minis for the same price. And if you like count up all the cores and all the extra hard drive space you'd have on those Macs, it's gonna be way more than you would ever have with the M4 Max base model. And if you got a bigger budget, I think the M4 Pro Max is like great. But honestly, you could buy 6 Mac Minis for the price of 1 Mac Pro. That's insane to think about, and I think you can get by with less. You know, every year there's a new Mac, and it always seems like we want the best, right? We have to have the most power, we have to have the best Mac. And the thing is, like, it's gonna become obsolete really soon, so why don't just get the base model and figure out how to do it with the base model. You can buy 6 Mac Minis for the same price as the M4 Pro Max. I mean, maybe wait for the M4 Max Studio to come out, but for the most part, I mean, it's just ridiculous to spend that amount of money when you could get so much more out of having like 6 Mac Minis. All right, so let's talk about displays. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the Mac Mini is that you'll need a separate display, and you really only have a few options because most displays don't pair well with the Mac. Due to scaled resolution issues, this is like a Mac thing. You can't really just buy any monitor and hook it up to a Mac. It's not gonna work because of the resolution scaling. Now, your first option is the Pro Display XDR, but it's about as expensive as a car, so that's not exactly budget friendly. Then there's the Apple Studio Display, which is about $1,500, which is still on the pricey side. But if you're looking to save, I would say get a used LG Ultrafine for about $500. I actually have been using my LG Ultrafine. It's 5K. I've been using it for the past 4 years, and it's been holding up great. I would say the display looks just as good as the Studio Display, and it's more than half the price, so you can't really argue with that. So if you're just looking at displays, I would say just go with the LG Ultrafine. I mean, you can go with an iMac and get a 24-inch iMac, but the problem with it is it's going to be smaller in screen resolution. And I used to have an iMac. I just prefer the 27-inch. I think it's way better. But the other problem with the iMac is if you buy the base model, it actually has less GPU cores and CPU cores as the Mac Mini. So it comes with 8. The Mac Mini actually comes with 10. So you're paying this higher price, but you're actually getting less performance. So I would say, why not just get the Mac Mini? Now, what about peripherals? For a mouse, I would just recommend the MX Master. It's one of the best mice you can get for a Mac. It's comfortable, it's great for editing, and I actually like to pair it with the Apple Trackpad. I know that's a little more expensive, but the trackpad is like one of my favorite mice, and I just mainly use it for switching screens and scrolling. But if you have the extra money, I would get something like that. For keyboards, I recommend getting the Keytron keyboard instead of the Apple one. It's less than half the price, so it's just going to be a whole lot cheaper. And if you are going to upgrade, the only thing that would be, for me, it would just be, go from 256 SSD to a 512. I think that's pretty reasonable. If you want more, go for more, but you are just going to pay a ton of money for a small amount of extra storage, and so I would try to keep that SSD as small as possible. For the past 4 years on my MacBook Air, I've been editing on this tiny 256 gigabyte SSD. It's kind of annoying at times, but it's not that big of a deal. You can do it. 512 would be nice, but you can be strategic, and if you are on a budget, just get the 256. So there you have it. In my opinion, the M4 Mac Mini is going to be the best video editing machine for video editors on a budget. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you later. Have a great day.